Live from the Hoboken Studios in New Jersey, I'm Tom Anderson. This is Terrific Talk.
Sound goes crazy.
Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the host.
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the back. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Knicks win it. Back.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. Today's episode is brought to you by MyBookie, where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And if you want to make money betting the games, you got to go to mybookie.ag. They have odds on every matchup and a mobile site that makes wagering on your smartphone a breeze. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit with up to a 50% bonus. Just use the promo code TERRIFIC to activate the offer. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, I got a great podcast for you today. Really fun guest, Casey Stern. Casey, one of the best in the business, and he's a big-time Mets fan, so I had to have him on today. Let's go Mets. He, of course, hosts a weekday show on SiriusXM's MLB Network radio channel. You can see him hosting studio coverage of the NCAA tournament, as well as the MLB playoffs on TBS. In addition to all of that, Casey's a studio host on NBA TV and the NBA on TNT. He's everywhere. I don't know what show Casey Stern isn't working on right now. And now he's here on Terrific Talk. So let me bring him in here. Casey Stern, welcome to Terrific Talk.
It's my pleasure, man. And always good to talk to you. And anytime I can talk sports, I'll take it. I'm still waiting for somebody to hire me to do hockey someday, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, you got time. So I read in your Twitter bio, you write, "Family's everything. Chase your dreams, living mine." When did this dream of yours to be a sportscaster begin? How did this all come about?
Yeah, it's funny. I was about 5 years old. The first time that I remember actually having a conversation about it, because I remember sitting there and having my parents have to close my door because I would sit on the floor with a pencil as a microphone and basically do the call with Bob Murphy as I watched the Mets and listen on radio. I always wanted to get into broadcasting, and I think, I don't know if I had this premonition, Tom, that I was going to be only 5'5" and not be able to actually play sports, but I knew I wanted to be involved in them in some way. So ever since I was a kid, man, I remember, everybody wanted to be an astronaut or, a scientist or the president. And, I was the guy raising my hand and saying, I wanted to be Vin Scully, and nobody knew who the heck that was at the age of 6, 7 years old. So really my entire life I wanted to do this. And, I'm lucky enough, knock on wood, I don't call it a job, to be able to do this for a living.
You clearly love what you do. As I mentioned at the top, you're on doing a million different shows. Where do you think the passion for you comes from to do all this?
I think the passion for me comes from being able to entertain, honestly, the most part. I do a lot of informing, clearly on the baseball side more so than basketball, which, I've watched as a fan, but I sit and soak up as a sponge. I'm only doing it the last couple of years. Baseball I've been covering for about 14 years on a day in, day out basis. But, the idea of entertaining and making an impact to me has always been really humbling. I mean, to this day, I mean this, I've always stayed grounded every single time somebody tweets me and says, they listen to my radio show, or I talk to somebody in the business on a baseball field who tells me that they get information from it or whatever the case may be. I'm always really humbled by that. And I think, for me as a kid, there were, certain guys that you would sit there and watch on TV and you said, wow, I want to be able to do that someday. And to be able to be one of those people that now can kind of pay that forward and have people be entertained by whatever I'm doing. I mean, honestly, I still kind of pinch myself that even that's possible, but I think that's kind of the biggest drive for me, is the joy I get out of being able to now be on the other side of it and actually come into somebody's living room or in their car and give them the same satisfaction I got watching as a sports fan all those years.
Full circle. A fun part of your story is you were a contestant on the ESPN show Dream Job back in 2004. If anyone who doesn't remember that show, it's basically American Idol for sports anchors. It was a really fun show. The winner would get a one-year contract with ESPN, and tens and thousands of people apparently tried out for this, and you made it really, really far. And the show kind of changed your life, I think. What was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I mean, I went to school to do this for a living and went to school in Boston and then came back home to New York, and things were what they were, so I had to get into really working to make money to help out versus, kind of chasing the dream. So I put it on hold. I did everything from insurance. I worked at the S&P, down, in the Wall Street area and was, executive recruiter at the time. The dream job happened. Moved out to LA to quote unquote find myself for a couple of years. I mean, I really kind of strayed away from this business. And when I heard about the opportunity for a dream job, at first I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to do it. My friends pushed me to go there. I was like the sixth person online in the initial audition in New York, and it changed my life. I mean, really more than anything else. And I mean this, I'm glad I didn't win. I'm glad I didn't have much handed to me. I had an opportunity handed to me. But, I started out doing voiceovers for baseball highlights for AOL.com was the first job I got back in 2004. So I had the opportunity to really pay dues and learn. And, even though I was a guy from a reality show, I wasn't really in the positions I was in because of it. And I think it put me in a much better spot than, winning a show and having to sit there and go backwards and prove myself. I got to kind of earn the respect that I've gotten over the years by really work that I put in myself. So it was a great experience. It was scary. Getting filmed all the time is not necessarily the most fun thing. People don't realize it's like an hour TV show, but they film you for like 11 hours. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking, but it was amazing, man. I can't thank ESPN enough. I always do. I mean, it's something that's far in the past for me from a career standpoint. But without that opportunity, I don't know what would have happened in my life. And it absolutely changed everything from that point forward.
On top of this, I mentioned in your Twitter bio, you write family is everything. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because we were talking before you said tonight you were watching the kids. How have you been able to balance your work life with your family life?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's really difficult. I don't know how these players do it. I say it all the time. But, when I'm sitting there and I've had the opportunity, knock on wood now, to do 14 straight World Series in the locker rooms and the champagne and all of that, but you see these guys with their families embracing in tears, and, they got 18 days off a whole year. They don't see their kids. I mean, I can't even imagine that. For me, it's tough enough, and I don't spend nearly as much time on the road. But, yeah, married, got 3 kids, and moved down to Atlanta to be closer to Turner about a year ago from New York, and there's certainly a lot going on. But for me, I guess what I mean by that for family is everything is, I've never forgotten priorities. I don't think that there's anything, special about me that I get to do this versus anybody else. My sister's a teacher and certainly deserves a lot more credit than anything I do. At the end of the day, it comes down to, the people you get to share it with and the people you're doing it for. And, if anything, I want my kids to grow up and know that their father, fought for what he believed he could do and kept chasing that dream. So, I never lose sight of that. I really don't. It's not lip service. It's something that has always been a big thing for me. And it's one of the reasons that if you talk to people who have worked with me before, I don't understand drama. I've seen it in this business. I've seen people, who get cranky and all sorts of stuff goes wrong. I mean, we're not sitting there in the middle of the Gaza Strip figuring out the fight. We're talking about sports. So, I've always used family to kind of keep that perspective.
I had Ernie Johnson on this podcast once, and he told me something interesting, being the studio host. He said, you're kind of like the point guard, where you got to make everybody around you a little bit better, kind of set them up to succeed. You're in a very similar position, all the studio shows that you do. I'm wondering, a guy like Pedro Martinez, who you're doing a show with, as the point guard, how do you make Pedro better? How do you make him succeed during the show? How does that work?
Make him comfortable. I mean, that's the first thing. I've been working with Pete now for 4 years, and the biggest thing for me, and I had a little bit of a leg up. I covered him in Boston in 2004. I also covered him in New York in 2007. So, we knew of each other a little bit, but just making him comfortable. I mean, this is Will Hunting. I mean, he legitimately is a savant. He's the smartest. I've worked with a ton of analysts over the years in 3 different sports, and he is, I don't want to say by far, but easily the one I would answer is the smartest in their sport that I've ever come in contact with. I mean, he's a genius. The fact that he's doing what he's doing in his second language, I don't think people really understand, how difficult that is. I mean, that tells you the brilliance that he's able to do this at that level, and it's not even his first language. But just make him comfortable. You have to really know the people around you. It's like anything else on a basketball court when you're the point guard. I mean, if a guy shoots threes, you got to know that you want to get it to him, in the corner when he's open. If the guy's sitting there and he's a post-up guy, you want to, make sure to kind of spread the floor, get everybody out of the way, and let him post up down low. It's the same thing. If I'm working with somebody like Pedro, he's a guy who's driven by being himself and not thinking and just going out there and having no filter. I think the best way any of us do that in our life is by being comfortable. So specifically for Pedro, that's always been the number one thing for me, is to make sure that he's having fun, having a good time, because the rest is going to be easy.
It's that whole dynamic between, you obviously weren't a player and you're with all these Hall of Famer guys, like say you're doing a show with Isaiah Thomas, how does that whole dynamic kind of work? How did you kind of gain the respect of, a Hall of Fame guy?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's not easy. It's been easy with the players I've been able to work with, Tom, to be honest with you, because they're really, to a man, especially at the two places we're talking about now, are just extremely good people. So it's been really easy, even though I did tell Isaiah the first time I talked to him that as a Knicks fan, I thought our relationship would have difficulties. So we've gotten past that. But I think the biggest way that I've done it on the basketball side, I'll speak to that because I have not been in the sport. Baseball's different. It took time, but after being around and networking and having relationships like I do with teams and, players and things of that nature, I could go on the field now and I'm, I would say at least a known commodity from a standpoint of people understand that I do that for a living. Yeah. Basketball was difficult. I just listened. Honestly, the best thing you could do is never sit there with a player and try and tell them what it's like to experience being on a floor or being at third base or being at the plate with 2 outs. And that's where, to me, so many anchors and hosts go totally wrong, and I throw stuff at the screen and I don't understand it. Now, you can understand and watch what players are doing, but you never feel like and should never believe that you know more than they do about what that feeling is. So, for me, I always respect that line. I always make sure to ask questions. And I try and stay as humble as I can. Granted, I'm a talk radio host and I have an obnoxious, opinionated personality, but I try and make sure that it's always about what I see and that I always follow it up by asking them what the truth is. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who know, we don't.
Talking with Casey Stern, you mentioned you're a Knicks fan, and you obviously know how special Madison Square Garden is, how it a lot of times pulls greatness out of great players. I'm wondering, what did you make of LeBron James' performance at the Garden last night?
Look, I thought really what I came away from it is I worked last night and was on the air right after that. And I admittedly, I was telling Bones Brent Barry, who I was working with, I was like, this is the first time since I started working here that I get to lead with like this great Knicks story. And then, of course, they blow a 24-point lead. So it doesn't work out that way in typical Knicks fashion. So it really put me in a place I've been for my whole life. But, I think LeBron, when he's on the stage, kind of, gets the love for the red light. I tend to like most of the things LeBron does and most of the ways he's represented himself. But I think he took an unfair shot at Ntilikina with the draft pick. I agree with him, and I called games in Summer League and was saying every time I saw Dennis Smith the same thing. But I think for LeBron, you're the torchbearer, you're the face of the game. You're supposed to have all these kids respect and look up to you. You want to rip Phil Jackson, you can do that. You want to go ahead and rip the Knicks, you can do that. But don't act like, you're surprised when people think there's something wrong with you basically saying that the Knicks made just an idiotic pick by taking Ntilikina instead of Smith. I thought that was unfair. I thought it was out of line. And I looked specifically after the game to see if LeBron was going to approach Ntilikina, maybe put his arm around him, say something, apologize, wish him the best. He didn't do any of that. So to be honest with you, I thought more about what LeBron didn't do last night than what he did do on the floor.
Yeah, I think definitely it was an unfair shot at Frankie. And I tend to believe LeBron. I think it was directed at Phil, just all the bad baggage that he's had with Phil over the last year or so. I think it was more of a shot at Phil than Frankie, but he wasn't thinking about Frankie. It was clearly not a great thing to say.
Quick break to talk about MyBookie. Holiday cash, you need it, and I know where to get it. MyBookie is the place to score serious cash on your sports predictions. You got to go to mybookie.ag. They have odds on every matchup and a mobile site that makes wagering on your smartphone a breeze. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit with up to a 50% bonus. Use the promo code TERRIFIC to activate the offer. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid. And listen up, Hoop fans. Basketball season is back, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to action, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. The best part, you get to draft a new team every day, and drafting a team is arguably the best part of fantasy, right? The only thing better, winning cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry into $1,000. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await, only at DraftKings. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Don't wait. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash in tonight. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Now back to Casey Stern.
14 games in here into the NBA season. Who's your MVP right now?
Well, I think it's got to be Kyrie. I'd love to tell you Porzingis, but I think it's at 22 is averaging 30 a game, but it's got to be Kyrie. Look, when this happened, and I was covering the day that Durant made his decision last year, and the day that Kyrie did this year, and you sit there and after what Durant did, which I had no problem with, because with no offense to anybody, at even money, there's no way I'm living in Oklahoma City when I can live in the Bay Area, and I don't care who's winning and who's not. So, we don't think about like real terms, like real life, but it's dollar to dollar. I don't care who's winning a championship. I'll be in the Bay Area. Give me a call from Oklahoma City. We can FaceTime. But in this case, I think a lot of people, including myself, were a little bit hesitant about why Kyrie would jump to beat the traffic out of Cleveland a year early and was rushing away from a chance to really guarantee himself a spot in the finals, which is where I think they were. He's done what he said he would do, and to me, that's all that matters. I mean, he's looked, since the Hayward thing especially, made players around him better. No team had ever gone 9, 10, 11, now 12 in a row after starting 0-2. He's, kind of kept his head down and stayed more about basketball and leading the team, and he really has stepped up and looked like the leader of this basketball team, which was never really how you saw Kyrie, because whether it was good or bad, it was always something LeBron was or wasn't doing, and he's taken the spotlight and done well. Now, we all know the character of anybody, including athletes who are human beings, is always better seen when things aren't going well, and they're not going to go 50-2. So when they start losing games, when he's not playing well or slumps, when the Boston media, and I've worked in it, get on him, how will he react to that? Because there's no LeBron to deflect away all the attention he's going to get. That, to me, is still a question. The playoffs, when he's not just the closer, but he's the finisher, the beginner in the middle, that begs a question. But I think right now he's the MVP, and the Celtics clearly look like the best team in the East.
Yeah, Celtics, a phenomenal start after the 0-2. I agree with you, Kyrie. Right now, the MVP. James Harden, for me, runner-up. I think he's hit 6 threes in 5 straight games. Unbelievable. He's been incredible. All right, Casey, thank you so much today for coming on the pod. You were awesome. Everybody go check out Casey Stern on Twitter. His handle is @Casey Stern. Casey, thank you so much. Good luck the rest of the season.
Tom, appreciate that, bro. Anytime, man.